Hey everybody, welcome to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. It's game week. Finally, it's game week. All of that off-season nonsense that we've been talking doesn't matter anymore because we're going to see the Trojans on the field against LSU on Sunday. We have the usual crew with us, Eric McKinney, Mark Colkin, and your temporary host, Chris Arledge. We're gonna do a season preview today. We're gonna go through the college football season at large. We'll probably hit on the LSU game, but the full LSU USC preview is going to be on Saturday. We've told you before that we're doing a live taping at the Palms Casino on Saturday morning. We're going to do a full breakdown of LSU USC. We're also going to answer viewer questions. Culkin's going to bring his acoustic guitar. He's got a little singer-songwriter thing he's been working. It'll be great. You can come by, check that out, listen to him sing, shake some hands, buy me lunch, and then it'll be time to walk right next door and do the band pep rally. I say right next door. It's actually the same place. We're just inside and they'll be outside because we're too soft. We're too soft to be out in the heat for an hour and a half. That's not what we're about.
T-Bob A-Bear just spoke, Chris.
What is that, Mark?
You're coming off like T-Bob A-Bear.
Yeah. Well, no, I saw that LSU is picked up right where Oklahoma and Auburn and Virginia Tech and Nebraska and Michigan and Ohio State and all the rest of them left off. Poor little surfer boys have no idea what they're getting into. We'll see. We'll talk about that. Okay. Let's jump right into our season preview here, fellas. And obviously, new conference and new look for college football. We now have the bulk of the Pac-12, or actually, I should say, not the bulk of the Pac-12. What matters from the Pac-12 is join the Big Ten, and we've got one giant super conference. So let's start with that. Let's predict who we think is going to be the top 5 in the Big Ten this year. And as part of that, let's talk about which of those teams is likely to make the playoff, the first 12-team playoff. Mark, you look anxious to get your knowledge out on the record. So why don't you start us off? What's going to be the top 5 in the Big Ten this year, and which of those Big Ten teams are going to the 12-team playoff?
So I've got in my top 5. I'm not ready to list them in order just quite yet. I've got Ohio State.
Oh, wait. When are you going to do that?
On Saturday when we do our live show from the Palms.
All right. Maybe you get. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Give us your top 5, but don't give us an order.
Yeah, I got Ohio State in there. I've got Iowa in there. I've got Oregon in there. I've got USC in there. And I've got Penn State in there. I literally think Michigan takes a big step back this year, Chris. I'm with you. I agree with what you said last week. Especially now, there's just way too much outside noise, BS going on for them. You got the NCAA getting ready to lay down the hammer. Probably, maybe. Starting quarterback situation still not ironed out. Again, they just lost too much on offense. And I get it. They've got a great culture. They've got that locker room stuff going on. Just too much going on for Michigan to be part of that top 5. Now, as far as who makes the playoffs, look, if we're listening to what Nick Saban had to say, it's the SEC and the big conferences world. The SEC's got 5 teams in there. He said the big is going to represent how many? You got Ohio State, Oregon, and what was the third? Penn State. So I don't know if I agree with all of those teams. I think it's probably. I think you're going to get at least 3 or 4 into the playoffs from the conference. I think 5 is a big number from the SEC.
Doesn't happen. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. Come on, Nick.
Again, that's Nick Saban. So are you going to question the greatness of Nick Saban?
I mean, not when it comes to coaching a football team, but on that particular prediction, yeah, I think I'm going to.
So let's say the big gets 3 teams in. I'm going to substitute USC in for Penn State.
So you have USC finishing in the top 3 of the conference. We kind of have an order now, a little bit.
a little bit.
All right, McKinney, does Mark know what he's talking about, and why is it that he's too much of a wimp to actually make his 1 through 5 prediction today? I don't understand that.
I'm soft. I grew up in SoCal.
I don't know if I can answer either of those. So I keep trying to knock Michigan out of the top 5 there. And I know the schedule is tough, and I know they've got so much stuff going on. I think they can hang on the 5. Look, if you told me to build a defense, I would take their 2 defensive tackles and their cornerback, and I would go from there. And I think they've got enough to sort of hang on in that 5. I know Iowa doesn't play a lot of great teams this year. I don't trust anything Iowa to do enough to win enough games. I know that's kind of been their MO, right? They've never had enough, and they kind of keep winning games. So I think that's like the edge 5, 6. The other Big Ten, right? I'll go chalk. Kind of where Mark is. USC, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State up there in that top group. I think Ohio State ends up winning it. I actually should say I think whoever loses that regular season game ends up getting back in the mix and winning at the end of that. I think if those 2 teams play each other twice, it's going to be really difficult to win 2 games against a team like that in Oregon, Ohio State. So I think that's kind of the top 5 for me. Again, I'm that Michigan, Iowa at 5. I don't know where Michigan goes, right? Because last year it was crazy. It was insane what they dealt with last year. And I know all the seniors that they had and all of that. I think they've got a lot back, and they learned. Those guys on the team kind of went through that too, and took a lot from it. So yeah, maybe they lose 6 games. Maybe they lose 6 games, and that'd be fine if one of them is September 21st. I think that sounds good. As far as the playoff, yeah, I think 4 SEC teams, because they're right. It's always going to be that push. I don't think 5 is insane, right? It's crazy, but I think when you get to that playoff, they're going to want brand names. They're going to want the brand name SEC/Big Ten school that's going to split that. You're going to get the one group of 5 team, but I don't see that group putting in another team like that when you can put a big name in and get more eyeballs there. I don't think if I have to sit and say it right now, I don't think USC makes the playoff this year. I think that's a lot. That's a lot to jump from last year to this year in terms of asking them to do that. So, yeah, I think the Big Ten gets 3 in pretty easily. I think Ohio State, Oregon, and I know Penn State's got the quarterback issue. I think the defense is really good. I think that running game is really good. I think they have enough to get there.
So go ahead and send your hate mail to Eric McKinney, USC fans. I don't want to receive it. I'm a good Trojan, and I'm going to make a good prediction. But, okay, here's the thing. Iowa's not going to be in the top 5, despite the fact that Iowa plays, other than having to go to Ohio State, which, admittedly, that's a brutal game. Other than that, Iowa's schedule looks like what you'd expect from a Big West team. I mean, it's an embarrassing schedule. But the problem with putting Iowa in the top 5 is I don't know if Iowa will score 5 touchdowns this year. I just don't know. And while I understand that Michigan lost a lot on offense, if you're talking about a team that just plays defense and which team's going to be better, I think Michigan will be better than Iowa. Now, I get it. I get what Mark is saying about the schedule. I mean, you look at Michigan's schedule, and it is just brutal. When you have Texas, USC, Michigan in your first 5 games, you have Oregon, you have a game at Ohio State. Your second easiest game on the schedule, presumably, is Fresno State. That's not a cakewalk. So that's a brutal schedule, and I think that's why I have them at number 5. I think they're going to be the 5th best team in the conference. I think they'll find a way to win. Defensively, I think they'll be good, but they don't have enough to deal with that schedule. 3 and 4 is going to be decided by the winner of that Penn State USC game at the Coliseum. And if the game were, and I think Eric's right, I think that Penn State team is going to be pretty good. And you know, if I had to put a point spread on the game right now, I'd probably favor Penn State by a couple of points. That being said, Penn State's playing away from home in a big game. That's not really what they do best. And I think by that point in the season, USC will have been tested already twice. Penn State will not have been. If USC can avoid injuries, those tests will help them. I like the Trojans in that one, but that's a game that could go either way. If USC wins it, I see them finishing 3rd in the conference. If they finish 3rd in the conference, they're going to make the playoff. If they're 4th in the conference, I think it's tough. I mean, the problem is you have the one small school bid, you have the 2 other conference winners, that gets you to 3. More than likely, you're going to have a Big 12 or an ACC team that's going to finish with a good record and finish 2nd in that conference. That's going to sneak in. You have Notre Dame. If you talk about putting in the big name teams, they're going to want Notre Dame in that playoff. And Notre Dame has a manageable schedule. That gets you to 5 teams out of the 12.
Is Florida State still part of the discussion? I mean, we can already start reinventing the deck chairs.
They are if they find a way to play in the trenches between now and when they play some better teams. But I mean, they didn't look good. Although maybe Georgia Tech is a national championship level team. I don't think so. Look, I don't know what you have there, but in any event, I think if you finish 3rd in the Big Ten, you're in. I'm going to pick USC to finish 3rd and Penn State to finish 4th, but I think it's going to come down to that game in the Coliseum in October. Ohio State and Oregon are the class of the conference. Oregon gets Ohio State at home, but I don't trust Oregon yet, and I'm not sure why anybody else would. They're a talented team that has not done anything. Ohio State has. My dog is going insane. Sorry. Ohio State is a team that has pretty consistently won for a number of years now. And while Ryan Day certainly got a program handed to him by Urban Meyer, Dan Lanning hasn't done anything yet. I trust Ohio State more than I trust Oregon. I have Ohio State number 1, Oregon number 2. Both those teams are going to make the playoff this year. That's my group. What do we think about that? We feel good about that. Mark, are you willing now to make your prediction, your 1 through 5? I mean, can you tell us who's number 1 at least?
So I'm going to go Ohio State 1, just because it's the trendy thing to do. I'll follow along. I'll say Oregon's number 2. Number 3, I got USC. And here's the benefit of this is where you get the benefit of not playing in the conference championship game. I'm a firm believer that USC is riding that 10-2 wave this year. I've got more confidence in the team that Eric does right now. So if you're 10-2 and you get to sit back and watch Ohio State and Oregon play twice, possibly, I like USC. I like where they are in the pole position. Again, put them right there in 3, Penn State 4, Iowa 5. How's that?
All right, I like it. Okay, so let's talk about
if USC can get to number 10 or better in the poll before Penn State comes in, chalk that up as a win, right? Penn State may as well forfeit that one. James Franklin does not beat top 10 teams, will not beat a top 10 team on the road. So that's the goal before the 6th game, right? Get into the top 10 and then cruise through that one.
Okay, so that's the Big Ten. Let's talk about some of these other conferences. Let's throw some predictions out there. Let's start with the ACC, since the ACC at least played a game. Eric, what do you think? What do you expect to happen in the ACC this year?
Can they all finish with losing records? Can you not have a conference champion?
No.
Yeah. So I think Clemson. We're gonna find a whole lot out. I think about Clemson. They got Georgia off the top. And I don't know if that's where you want to start, like to develop a good feeling about the season. But I think that might be the team. I'm not going to go with a Mario Cristobal Miami team, even though I'd take the quarterback, I'd take the running back. I think those two are pretty good additions. By the way, Pac-12 players going out there and making a name in the ACC. Right, Florida State, I think, could right the ship, but I don't know. The way they ended last season, the way they start this season, that's a tough one to get behind. I think Clemson, I don't feel great. I don't feel great about saying anybody. I kind of wish, right, Virginia, North Carolina State, like it'd be fun to throw a team like that out than one of these big names that kind of trips and stumbles to the end.
Go Duke, Garrett.
Yeah, that's it, Duke. I'm on it.
Good. Mark, you agree? Is it a Blue Devil season in the ACC?
I know that the two teams that everybody anticipated being at the top of the poll at the end of the season in the ACC, they're probably going to start off 0-1. So Florida State already tripped over their third leg. You've got Clemson, as Eric just mentioned, they're opening up against Georgia. I don't know, is Miami here? I think North Carolina with Mac Brown is a dark horse. Keep an eye on that Georgia Tech team. I get it. It's one game, but when you watch how they play with effort. They were winning the trenches against Florida State, where Florida State was supposed to win in the trenches, and it wasn't close. I think Florida State's in for a long season if they stick with DJU at quarterback, period. I don't know how many coaches want to ride into the sunset with that guy, but Mike Norvell needs to pull the trigger now. Otherwise, he is going to waste that season. That's a wide open conference. They're getting maybe two teams into the playoffs, conference champion and Notre Dame, even though they're not really a conference representative. Outside of that, look at Georgia Tech, and I'm going to look at Georgia Tech to win that conference this year. Because Mario Cristobal, he will ruin Cam Ward. He finds a way to ruin quarterbacks.
Look, nobody wants to be in that conference, and Florida State was playing like they didn't want to be in that football game the other day. Openers are tough, right? Opening games are tough. I think opening games are even tougher in the portal era, because you have people throwing in a bunch of new bodies, and oftentimes it's guys that played well at their previous school, like USC's offensive line last year. You looked at that group and said, all right, these guys should be okay. I felt comfortable that they would be solid. But for most of the year, they weren't. So it's tough. Speaking of tough, being a Florida State fan for the last 15, 20 years, right? That's brutal. That may be harder than what we've had to deal with here. They underachieve consistently. They've had pretty awful quarterback play for the most part since Jameis Winston left. They didn't last year until the kid got hurt. But that made it worse, right? They beat everybody. They're undefeated. Quarterback gets hurt. They're out of the playoff, and then they get beat. I think it was 1,000-6 in the bowl game when nobody showed up. I mean, that's a tough. I feel bad for FSU fans. I really do. But I don't feel bad for their coach, because why in the world did he think that was the quarterback option that would get him into the promised land? I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I mean, this is a big kid with a big arm, and you look at him and you say, this guy can make plays. I'm just not convinced that he's a quarterback. Just not convinced.
How do you not have a quarterback in your pipeline at FSU? You know Jordan Travis is gone. How do you not have a quarterback at a university that's well known for putting out quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happened to their quarterback room. I know that these days it's tough to hold on to talented kids who aren't playing at that position. But I mean, so obviously they looked awful. I don't know what to make of. I don't know what to make of most of the other teams in the conference. Clemson has struggled offensively for a few years now. They're going to struggle offensively this week. After that, I don't know. I'm not sure that Dabo has adjusted yet to the new look of college football. I'm not sure that he wants to, but At some point, he's going to have to decide whether he wants to raise NIL money and take transfer portal guys, because while the other elite programs are filling holes with those guys, he's not. And I'm not sure that it's a little bit unfair in some ways, right? Because you want to criticize Dabo because the program has fallen off, but they're still a good team. And it's not like Clemson's a program that's dominated over the years. It's like he's not coaching at Ohio State or Alabama. He's coaching at Clemson, which has always been a good but not great program. And if he's going to win 9 games a year there, that's going to put him in the upper echelon of Clemson head coaches historically. So I don't want to criticize the guy too much, but what was the program in college football, 1A and 1B with Alabama, doesn't look the same. I'm going to go with Clemson just because I saw what Florida State looks like and didn't love that. So we'll go with Clemson, but I'm not sure there's anybody in that conference that looks like they're going to be any good this year, is my guess. All right, that leaves us with 2. Let's go with the little brother before we get to the big one. Big 12 this year. What do we think is going to happen in the Big 12? Mark, what do you think?
Look, as long as Jared Tull quarterback Cam Rising doesn't get hurt, I think Utah is going to probably win that conference.
Eddie?
Yeah, I'll go with Utah. I think Kansas State is sneaky. There again, some of these programs, you look at their schedule, it's like, yeah, I'd play that schedule twice this year and be okay with it. That's one of those. I think Utah is a team that shows up and you watch their film from last year and on their guys, and it's like, okay, we got this. And then you go play them and you're like, I don't want to be on the field with these guys anymore. It's not fun. And so I think they have a chance to kind of sneak up and get some teams this first year. You're going to find out pretty quickly that you got to get ready for them, and USC that did that. But I still remember going way, way back to the first Pac-12 game where they played Utah, and it was like, oh, this is
Okay.
who these guys are, and it didn't feel like USC was ready for it, even though they did win that game.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think that Utah is probably the way to go. I know what you're going to get from that. You're going to get a very disciplined, hard-nosed team. They're going to play good defense. They're going to run the ball. And with Cam Rising, Cam Rising is the 3rd most experienced quarterback in the country. I'm including the NFL in that. I mean, the guy's like 48 years old. He's been playing forever. You're not going to trick Cam Rising.
Right.
So I think that's probably the way to go. They do have a road test at Oklahoma State, who's I guess the other real contender in the conference. They don't have Kansas State. So I like Utah in that one, although I'm a man, I'm 40, might sneak up on them. And if you beat Utah at home, who knows, you may be able to turn that into something. But that's as long as I want to spend talking about the Big 12, because let's be honest, the ACC is a conference that nobody wants to be in, and all the big powers are trying to get out. The Big 12 is a conference full of teams who are just happy to have a conference.
Right.
I mean, they're just happy that they're not Washington State at this point, and that doesn't mean that they don't have some good football teams. They do. What they don't have are any elite teams in that conference. And so let's go to the conference that thinks they have only elite teams, and all of the elite teams in the country, the SEC. Does anybody think anybody other than Georgia is going to win the SEC this year? Let's start with that.
There's no Kiffin fans. Nobody's on Ole Miss.
I actually think Kiffin's a pretty good football coach and he's entertaining, but no, they're not winning the SEC.
They don't have the depth on that roster to stand up like Georgia can. That's the difference between them right now. I think offensively, Ole Miss is better, but Ole Miss, if they suffer a key injury, if Jackson Dart goes down, they're screwed. And look, let's be honest, Jackson Dart plays pretty aggressive football at the most important position. So unless he learns how to slide, I don't see him making it through the season. I hope he does.
Right.
I like him.
No, it's Georgia.
By the way, have you guys seen this Ole Miss non-conference schedule? Check this out. Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, and let's see, who's the one they get at the end? They're not doing the play
That's got
somebody.
When do they play Furman? Furman's not their Week 11
August
siesta?
31st. August 31st. That's it. That's their first 4 games, and before they get into Kentucky.
They must get a double bye. They get a double bye late in the year. They don't play in November.
Look, they have Georgia at home late in the year. They have Oklahoma at home. They do play at LSU.
But it was USC who wanted to get out of the series, right?
I mean, it's probably not just USC. I suspect that Lane was fine with missing that one. Look, I think Georgia probably wins the conference. Alabama will be fascinating. Alabama still has a ton of talent on that roster. Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach. I don't expect there will be an immediate drop-off there. And there may never be a huge drop-off, although expecting him to stay at Nick Saban's level would be too much to ask of anybody, right? I mean, Saban is probably the most successful college football coach in history. I don't think DeBoer will be able to do that. But I do think they're going to be good. Probably really good. The problem I have from Kalen DeBoer is what happens if you lose 2 games this year? I mean,
you're in the playoff.
You go 10-2. They'll make the playoff, but you go 10-2 at Alabama following Nick Saban, and it's not like that Alabama fan base is rational, level-headed. I mean, they're gonna be out for blood. That is a huge pair of shoes to try to fill, and I just don't know that. I don't know that I'd want any part of that if I were him.
I know things move a lot slower in the South, more laid back. But I really think eventually this paradigm shift is going to start to take over. People are going to realize that just win 10 games. If you win 10 games in the SEC, in the big conference, you're in the playoffs. That's all that matters now. And if you can you win your conference, you get a bye. Obviously, that helps. But get inside the top 8, you get a home field.
So let's talk about, I mean, if we have Georgia and Alabama as your top 2, they're going to be in.
Sure.
Ole Miss, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas. I mean,
Tennessee in there too. Like they have. They're throwing around money with everybody in terms of recruiting. Like that, they've got that defensive end who's going to go high in the draft. I mean, they've got a roster there too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't trust Oklahoma. Oklahoma's schedule is brutal. They start the season 16. I think they finish lower than that. Texas has a ton of talent on that roster. I don't trust Steve Sarkisian. Maybe somebody else does. I do not. I've seen enough of him over the years. I know he was younger. I'm sure he's grown. I do not trust him. Texas may still get to 10 wins and get in, but I could see Ole Miss finishing ahead of Texas in the rankings, and maybe that's your 3. I don't know. If Texas makes it to 10 wins, but if they're a 4th place team with 9 wins, they're not getting in. So I don't know. But until I get a memo that we should be doing otherwise, I'm picking Georgia to win because that's all they've done for the last 4, 5, 6 years. So it's hard to bet against them at this point. Okay. How about this? Your Heisman finalists for this season. Mark, who are they going to be?
All right. I got Carson Beck over there at Georgia. He's put in his time. His stats aren't going to say he should be in New York, but again, he's going to have the wins to get him there, and that's, I think, the number one thing. Quinn Ewers at Texas. The media is already making him the number one. I don't know if you see the latest Dr. Pepper commercial. He stars in it. So obviously they're putting a lot of weight behind him. I got another grandpa quarterback in college football, Dylan Gabriel. I think he'll be there. I think the stats alone will put him in New York. I think Kalen DeBoer is going to do for Jalen Milroe at Alabama what he did for Michael Penix at Washington. I think Alabama will win 10 games. Jalen will look, he'll have enough of those moments, and you'll probably see him in New York. And then anytime Lincoln Riley has a dog in the hunt, so why not Miller Moss, right?
I love it. Culkin is going USC in the playoff, Miller Moss in New York. That's what the fans want, Eric. Why can't you deliver what the fans want?
He's also going 5 guys in New York when 4 get invited. So I don't know. This is a Mount Rushmore issue.
Fans 5 do.
When did I honestly, I didn't know they cut it down to 4.
I thought a few years ago it was 4 every year, right? Has there been?
I don't think so. I think it's where there's a natural split between the guys at the top and the guys below. But maybe. But
All right.
Okay, so you're dropping Miller Moss because of this 4 rule. Is that what you're telling us?
No, I'm dropping Jalen Milroe. I said anytime Lincoln Riley has a
No,
dog.
I'm talking McKinney.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Mark, I know you're going to give the people what they want.
I'm taking 5. I'm taking the whole USC offensive line. That's my 5. They're all there. They win all the regions.
The Caleb Williams of the show just spoke.
Yeah.
Alani Noah, Heisman finalist. I'm excited about that. That's a good prediction. Who else you got besides the 5 1?
Yeah, I'm inviting 12. I'm inviting 12 guys to the Heisman ceremony. I've got so Carson Beck at this point has to coast, right? He doesn't need to put up anything. They need to win games, and he gets to go. I think Dylan Gabriel's probably in that same boat. I don't think they need to put up a ton of stats and points and all of that. I think that if you're in the lead, you win games, you do what is kind of expected of you, and you get to coast on that a little bit. I've got 2. I don't hate the Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe. I think those guys are really good. I've got 2 maybe off the board a bit that I think their teams will push them hard to put up huge numbers. They're in an area of the country where they will get people to rally around them, and their schedules are cakewalks to where they can be in the hunt at the end. That's Luther Burden from Missouri. He's going to return kicks. They're going to get the ball in his hands 80% of their snaps at Missouri just to push him. And again, he's a name that people already know about going into the season. If you're looking for like a Caleb Williams highlight type player, Avery Johnson at Kansas State. Again, he is going to run for 15, 20 touchdowns and throw for a bunch. Like I said, Kansas State does not play a lot of great teams this year. I think those are 2 guys, not completely off the board, but like not chalk up at the top that I think can put up the stats and get people kind of excited about them.
Yeah, you guys have the same names I do. Well, I have one addition because you have to have a dark horse, right? There's always somebody that shows up that nobody expected to show up. It's either going to be a quarterback from a team that wins 11 games, or it's going to be something unusual. I'm going unusual. I'm going Travis Hunter of Colorado. I don't think Colorado is going to be any good, but this is a guy who, if he's going to be playing both ways. He's going to make plays both ways. He's going to make some highlight reel plays. The media still likes to cover Colorado. They like to put Dion on the television screen. So I'm going to put him in. I'm going to put him in as a finalist, even though I think that's unusual or unlikely that he'll make it. But somebody unlikely is going to make it. I don't think it's going to be Miller Moss this year. I think Miller Moss is going to have a good season and set himself up for a Heisman run next season. But I think it's going to be tough for him to jump in this year unless USC goes 11-1, in which case all bets are off.
Should your players be allowed to win the Heisman? I mean, if you need 6 years to prove yourself as a good quarterback, do you deserve to be there? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I could see Cam Rising being there, and he's an 8th-year player, I think.
I didn't mention him. I didn't mention him, but I did mention Gabriel. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. No, I mean, if Utah wins the Big 12 and Rising plays well, and he will, then he's a guy who could make the cut too. And he's been. I mean, I think Cam Rising was in high school when I was, but good player. So, okay. All right, let's get back to USC then. Let's talk about who from this Trojan squad is going to make the All Big Ten team. We'll start just with first team. And then we'll talk about guys who may make second or third teams. And will USC have an All-American this year? Eric, what do you think? All-Conference, first team, All-American? Who they got?
This is tough. Now there's so many teams in these conferences that it makes it so hard to be, when you're talking about first team guy, the best guy at your spot. USC, first of all, does not have guys coming into the conference where the coaches or media people who cover them really know about them. Like you saw that in the preseason teams. There's kind of already that pecking order set in the Big Ten of we know this Iowa safety, right? We know this Ohio State corner. And so it's going to take a lot, I think, for USC players to get to that point. And so as far as first team, I think a guy like Kamari Ramsey in this defense can make the kind of impact that takes you there as a safety, especially because sometimes in the defensive backfield, right, there's like 4 safeties that they'll take on a team there. I think Jonah Monheim at center, if he has a good year, I think there's the Nebraska center, I think going in is like the guy that people are looking at. If USC has a much better offensive year than Nebraska, I don't think that's a tough call to make. Jonah Monheim's coming in with kind of plenty of credit in his career. I want to say a USC wide receiver. I don't know if any of them, I think collectively, those guys will be great. I don't know if one of them separates to where if you've got like one guy who's a focal point for another offense, he'll put up the numbers where you look at that and he goes, oh, 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. Yeah, he's on it. If the USC leading receiver, 950, 960 yards, 8 touchdowns, it's just not gonna compare to people who look at numbers like that. So Kamari and Jonah, I'll say that there's those two. I think that Big Ten coaches are finally going to wake up and not kick to Zachariah Branch. Outside, maybe Michael Lance. Maybe Michael Lance, the kicker, gets in there and scores enough points, hits enough kicks this year for USC. So 2.5, I guess, for first team Big Ten for me.
2.5. I'm with you. 2.5 is not a terrible number when you have this many teams and this many good teams in the conference. Mark, what do you think? You have what, 8, 9 Trojans on the first team?
So because I interpret your question as they're going to make an all-conference team, you didn't designate first team. I
apologize. I apologize to you personally, Mark, for making this difficult for you.
Accepted. So, yeah, I have a few more. But again, you have multiple all-conference teams. So that's where I'm going with this. I'm not saying all these guys are landing first team. I want to be perfectly clear about that. So as far as who can make both all-conference and all-American, I think Jonah Monheim and Zachariah Branch, they qualify for those. Where they land up, all-conference and all-American, doesn't really matter. Zachariah Branch as a freshman was first-team All-American. I don't anticipate him taking a step back. Now, as far as all-conference, where the rest of the guys land on offense, I've got Emmanuel Prignon. I'm not saying first team. He could be a second or third team offensive lineman. Miller Moss, I think, again, he might not win over Dylan Gabriel or Will Howard based on everything. But USC quarterbacks, Lincoln Riley, I think you have to give a little bit benefit of the doubt to that. And then, I don't know, Woody Marks, he might slide in there on the opposite side of the ball. On the other side, Bear Alexander, all-conference. I know this is probably going to make some people go, really, Mark? I think Jameel and Anthony Lucas can end up all-conference.
Really, Mark?
I have a little bit more faith in Anthony Lynn. I agree with everything Eric said about Kamari Ramsey. The cornerback. The secondary, USC might dominate the all-conference teams in the big. That's how good that secondary can be. So, I don't know, three more guys out of the secondary will land somewhere. on an all-conference. You're not going to get any All-Americans out of it. You'd love to, but you're not going to.
All right. So it seems to me that USC has three guys that are the most obvious candidates: Monheim, Branch, and Bear.
Yeah.
The problem that Monheim has is that centers don't have numbers that you can look at. So USC is just going to have to be a great offense. They're going to have to play really well up front. And if they all play really well up front, Monheim's the guy that's going to get it. If they don't play well at some of those other positions and they don't play well as a group, then Monheim won't get it. And it's not really going to be his fault. But he'll be a fantastic player this year. Bear is similar in that I don't expect that Bear is going to have a ton of sacks. It's not like an edge rusher that, an edge rusher who comes up with 14 sacks going to make the first team. He's probably not going to do that. I do think though that he's going to be in enough big games, including taking on LSU and its top-ranked offensive line, that if Bear makes the jump that I expect him to make this year, he can open up some eyes, and that's a guy who could make a first or second team. Zachariah Branch can if people kick to him. I don't think he's going to as a receiver. If people kick to him, then he has a good chance to make it. He has an even better chance if USC decides to block for him occasionally this year. But this is a guy who is first team All-American as a returner. Everybody in the conference knows who he is. He was a big-time recruit, first-team All-American as a freshman. That's a guy who, if he gets a couple kick return touchdowns this year, can probably make it. I don't think you're going to have any other guys have a chance at the first team. You could see, Easton Arnold Mascarenas, who I think is going to have a really great year. Miller Moss, we already mentioned. Miller Moss is going to put up big numbers because Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks always do. Kamari Ramsey. I could see Jacoby Lang making a second or third team because I think he's going to have a number of circus catches, and I think his overall numbers will be good. But USC has so many receivers this year that I don't think he's going to put up the kind of numbers that'll get you a first team mention. And I could see an edge rush. I could see Braylon Shelby if he comes up with an 8 or 9 sack year, making a second or third team. I mean, that could happen. But those are the guys that seems to me have the best chance of doing it. Okay. Let's talk about USC's offense for a second. I don't think Lincoln Riley has ever been outside the top 10 in scoring offense since he first started as an offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. And I think they've been very close or within the top 10 in total offense every year, too. New conference, new quarterback, some questions on the offensive line. Where does USC finish in total offense and scoring offense this year? Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, you're pushing me to say outside of the top 8, right? Isn't that, I think it's 8 or 10
You're
where
not
he's
pushing
been.
anything, Eric.
No,
I just want you to
I can feel your tone. So I do think this year he's outside of there, but not by much. I think they're still in the top 15 for both of those, scoring and total. And so let's say 14 for scoring and 15 for total offense. I think they're right there. A huge drop. A hugely disappointing offensive year for Lincoln Riley, where he's still in the top 15 nationally.
Where they average 40 points,
yes,
and 478 yards. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah.
So, assuming USC just drops to the floor to 15, that means they're scoring 35 points per game. That's what the number 23 scoring offense was last year. Oh, by the way, that was Texas. Guess where they ended up this season? So if USC has to struggle with 35 points a game as opposed to 41 points per game, we're all hoping and praying that USC's defense can support that 35 points per game if they ended up in the top 15, right?
Yeah, look, I think USC has a tough schedule.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I think they're going to score at home against Notre Dame. I think they will score against that LSU defense. I think they're going to score fine against Washington. Michigan and Penn State are going to be difficult defenses to score against, and so those are games where maybe you're scoring in the 20s, but I think they're going to be fine. I don't know if they're going to be in the top 10, but it would not shock me if they're in the top 10. I think if they play reasonably well up front, and I think they'll play reasonably well, they should be able to do that. So I'm gonna go number 12 in both. That's where I'm going. By the way, we should talk about, if you haven't, look, this LSU game is going to be fantastic. It's already sold out.
Yeah.
It is not sold out on GameTime.co. GameTime.co, it is not sold out. I just checked. I looked. There are a bunch of tickets, including some reasonably priced options, considering this is a sellout and it's a huge game and two big name programs. There were tickets I saw in the 130s still. Tickets all over the stadium. So if you haven't done it yet, I told you earlier we're going to have a meet and greet. If you weren't planning to come to the game because you just weren't excited enough about USC against LSU, maybe the meet and greet with us will take you over the top. Go download the Game Time app, create an account. Another sweetener, if you put on3 and the number 3, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course, as they always do. But if you don't have tickets, get your tickets. Let's go. Let's meet out there. It's going to be great. If you don't want to go to the USC LSU game, or if you're otherwise occupied, you can go to just about any other game in the world. They've got all kinds of stuff on there. They've got concerts. They've got plays. They have, Mark, are they going to sell tickets for your singer-songwriter thing that you're doing?
Go check it out. You can find any ticket.
You can find all kinds of stuff. They're reasonably priced. I told you last week I bought USC Penn State tickets on the Game Time app. So download the Game Time app today. I mean, right now. Do it right now. Pause this. Download it. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay. Now, let's go to the USC defense. This is where, I mean, look, it doesn't take a lot of courage to say that USC is likely to score points and move the ball this year, right? I mean, this is what Lincoln Riley's teams always do. But USC is coming off, I would say, the last 3 years is about as bad as you will ever see a major college team play defense, right? I mean, 3 straight years of just absolutely horrific. Like, you go take a local high school team and throw them out in the field, they're putting up 20. That's how bad it was. And it was awful. New staff, whole bunch of new dudes, especially in that secondary. All right, so it's time to be brave. Mark Harkin, you're going to give the people what they want. I know that. So I want to know, where will USC's defense finish in total defense and scoring defense in 2024?
Well, let me just throw some numbers at you, because I know everybody loves numbers. What if I told you that last year's scoring defense, number 45th in the country, okay? Let me go back to my notes here.
I'd say you're a liar. Last year's USC scoring defense, 45 in the country.
I said,
is that just in first quarter? That's just counting first quarters where everyone else has the whole game.
What if USC could have last year's 45th total defense? Okay. The 70th scoring defense in the country last year. Okay, number 70 in the country. They gave up. Are you ready for this? The 80th. They gave up 28 points per game. USC gave up what? 34.
So the 80th ranked defense gave up 28 points per game?
Yeah. And USC was giving up 34 points per game. So USC just needs to improve by a touchdown, and all of a sudden they're the 80th best scoring defense in the country.
Something to look forward to.
Right? Can they make that big of a baby step? I think they can. So the sweet spot is somewhere between where USC finished last year and maybe above 80. So if you're only giving up 4 touchdowns per year, I like USC's chances, especially if they're going to stay in that top 15 scoring range.
80th? That's your prediction, 80th?
Hey, they're giving up 28 points per game. That's a full touchdown better.
I don't
You
even
got
want
to
to go to
get
Las
Miller
Vegas
Moss
now.
to the Heisman ceremony, man. You got to give up points to get the ball back.
Well,
Look at the numbers, man. The 80th ranked defense last year. The 80th ranked scoring defense, Arkansas, gave up 25 points per game. 28 points per game. Move it up to number 50. Move up to number
yeah, let's do that. What's that?
Coastal Carolina, 23.5. I mean, when you say top 50, people think, oh, it's got to be. What is that number? It's 23.5 points per game. It's not that much better than 28. I mean, so you look at the statistical numbers, just look at the teams.
So what number are you picking? I'm still confused.
I
Are you
think
picking
anything
80th?
above 80 is putting USC in a good position.
Cut.
I mean, remember, last year they gave up almost 35 points per game, 34
You
points.
gave up. Yeah, and if you just focus on the last half of the season, it was like 180 points per game. I don't know. I don't want to talk about last year anymore. I don't want to talk about it. It's just going to make me mad, and then I'm going to go
Does
on a
anybody
tirade
believe
again.
that USC's defense is going to improve where they're giving up less than 23 points per game this year? I mean, Chris, Eric, do you believe that? Do you think they're going to make that big of a jump?
We'll see.
Okay,
Not my
fine.
turn yet.
Probably
Yeah.
not.
Okay, it's your turn. Go ahead.
I'm going to go with the USC defensive number, 55th. 55th in the country. I think it's like chopping it in half, basically, from last year in terms of the ranking, right? And I think that's, around there, 24, right? 24 a game?
So they're going to be Ball State level defense. Okay.
Well, that's
not
different,
put-
right? Ball State's not playing an SEC schedule or a Big Ten schedule. There's going to be teams that score, right? I think that Penn State offense is going to be pretty good this year. I think they're going to score points. I think Brian Kelly can put an offense together. I think LSU, especially out of the gate, I think they're going to score points because they're going to have some kinds of wrinkles, right? But Utah State, right? I don't think like they're going to roll in and put up 28 or 35. Like, I think this defense can out-physical, out-scheme them to where you're holding teams down. Yeah, I think that you can see a couple offenses this year that are those Big Ten offenses, again, that are going to hold Zachariah Branch in check because they've spent 100 years practicing punting instead of offense. So I think you're going to get some of those teams lined up, and I think you're going to have some pretty low scores that we're just, right, we're used to 45, 42. That's the game. That's the games we've been used to watching for 2 years. I think we're gonna get a few that aren't that. And whether that's USC maybe sitting on the ball a little bit, taking some possessions out because you have a defense that you can trust a little bit. I know that you're not going to have an offense. I believe very strongly you're not going to have a USC offense that goes out there on the field and you can see it in how they act. If we don't score 9 points on this drive, we're going to lose because then we're going to get behind and we can't make it up because our defense is never going to stop anybody. So I think you're going to get maybe some more normal scoring games where, you don't, I mean, I know college football has gone a little bit crazy offensively, right? 52-49, like that's a game you see every weekend now between two just random teams that maybe you don't expect it from. But yeah, I think it's a sizable jump. I think so I do agree with Mark in that, like, just saying, oh, they should be a top 30 defense. They should be a top 40. Like that's a big jump. And a lot of those defenses are either just elite guys with 8 first-round picks all over the defense, or they're playing offenses that can't do anything. Right. And you get a bunch of those on it and you throw some 3-point, 7-point outings and you can do that. So yeah, I'll go 50-55, I think, for yards and points for USC, which again, I think is a significant jump and will result in some more wins.
If I told you USC is giving up 27 points per game this year, Chris, how many games are they winning?
8.
Just 8 if they're only giving up 20?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not good. And I'll tell you why. Because here's the thing. Look, LSU has a good offense. They're going to score points, right? They're going to score points. But, Utah State, USC, Michigan, that feels like a game that should be played in the 20s. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Maryland, Rutgers, a Washington team that's completely depleted, Nebraska, UCLA. That's a lot of teams that USC should be able to play in the low 20s. A lot of them, right? Iowa does not have 8 first-round choices, but they always up there in the rankings. You know why? Because they get to play Wisconsin, Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, and teams like that don't play offense. I think USC's defense surprises this year. And I think they probably finish just inside the top 40 on both offense and defense.
By the way, Minnesota's defense surrendered 26.7 points per game last year. Good for 67th in the country.
Yeah, that's not good enough to get you into the playoff, I don't think.
If you have
with this
USC's
USC
offense, it is.
Well, USC's going to have a good offense. They are not going to have an offense where you expect them to score every time they go out the way they did much of the last 2 years, especially 2 years ago. I don't think they're going to have that kind of offense. I think this is going to be an offense that has to grind it out some, that has to play smarter. They're not going to just be able to. I mean, there were times with Caleb Williams out there where he would just go out and do magic, right? He would just run around and do something spectacular. Miller Moss is not going to do spectacular things. He's going to distribute the ball to a really good group of skill position players. And if they can protect him, USC will average 38, 39, 40 points a game, which is solid. But they're not going to score 38, 39, 40 points a game against Michigan and Penn State and Notre Dame. And so if you're giving up points in those games, then you're probably going to lose them. So I think USC's in the top 40. And I think USC's in the top 40 because I think that defensive line is better than people think it is. I think the secondary is solid. And if they can avoid injuries at linebacker, I think they're going to be okay. There is such an enormous gap between what you saw under Alex Grinch, where players can't get lined up right, and what you're likely to see with this coaching staff, that people are going to be stunned. That USC had some players last year that were pretty good players that didn't play like it. So even before you talk about the completely revamped secondary, even before you talk about adding an all Pac-12 first-team linebacker, you're talking about a group that would have gone from 100 and whatever it was to 80, 70, based solely on the fact that you have competent coaches for the first time. But when you talk about adding a linebacker like that, when you talk about a revamped secondary, when you talk about having now 9 300-pounders up front, including some guys like Anthony Lucas, who I think will make a big jump and can move around, can be versatile. I think it's a good defense, guys. I think there will be games where the USC defense outplays the USC offense, which has probably only happened once in the last 2 years against Oregon State 2 years ago. There are going to be games this year where the USC defense outplays the USC offense, and that's a good thing. So I think they're gonna finish within the top 40. The real question is, what are they going to do against the elite offenses, right? I mean, what are they going to do against LSU? That LSU team is going to score a lot of points against a lot of people. Can they hold that team to 28 points? If they can hold that team to 28 points, they're going to win the game. If they score 42, they're probably not going to win the game. And so I don't know what USC is going to look like against those elite offenses. But do I think this USC defense is going to be just fine against the Nebraskas, Rutgerses, Marylands, Minnesotas, those teams? Yeah. I think they're going to look pretty good against those teams because almost everybody looks pretty good against those teams. That's why the Big Ten, that's why if you look at the top defensive teams last year, like 15 of the top 30 are Big Ten teams. Slight exaggeration, but that's the way it is because you have a lot of teams in that conference that play a different style of offense. It's called plotting. So I think USC is going to be okay defensively, and I do think they're going to make a pretty significant jump. Okay. Let's end with this. And by the way, we're ending. We're not playing Arledge's 10 questions. We're going to split it off, put it in 2 separate shows. please do come back and watch our game show. I don't know if either one of these guys will perform better if we split up the shows, but that's the hope. I mean, it's been with Culkin and McKinney over the last 6 months, it's been kind of like watching USC's defense last year. Every time we play 10 questions, I think they're going to get better. We're going to split it up.
Couldn't possibly get worse.
It can't get worse.
It could be the guy who's directing Mr. Grinch.
Well, is this game officiated by Alex Grinch? Maybe. All right. So, give me the sentence that will ultimately sum up USC's 2024 season. Mark Hogan, go.
Lincoln Riley now has a complete football team and is going to be a difficult out in the playoffs.
Okay. Eric McKinney?
Yeah, mine, I had two, and then I realized I could do that and just kind of run on and compound the sentence. I think that was good football, and I see the future plan. I think that this season sets them up defensively to now go forward as like what Mark said, complete team.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go with one from 2002. We're just getting started, and I don't mean by that USC is going to finish in the top 3 and crush a big time opponent in a bowl game. I don't know that they're going to be that level of good, but I do think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a very good offensive team, a solid defensive team, and they're going to show college football that Lincoln Riley's teams can play defense and are committed to playing defense, and let the Big Ten know that USC football is coming back in a big way. I think that's probably what they'll do. Does that mean that they're going to make the playoff? I don't know. I think they have a shot, but they're going to have to beat. I think they're going to have to win two of their first 3 big games, right? They're going to have to win 2 of 3 against LSU, Michigan, and Penn State to do it. So if they beat LSU, I feel pretty good about that. If they lose to LSU, then it looks like 9-3 is probably your ceiling. But I'm
the nice thing though, not to jump over, but the nice thing about having that Notre Dame game at the end when Notre Dame is good is that kind of counts for 2 games when you're USC and you play. Yeah. You can play that game under kind of some spotlight and attention, right? That can be a big boost at the end that maybe can erase some stuff early on.
I agree with that. And look, guys, playing Notre Dame in LA is vastly different than playing them at Notre Dame. And USC's horrific defense the last 2 years actually played pretty well against the Irish, both games. Gave up some passing yards 2 years ago, but held Notre Dame to 27 points in that one. And the defense played fantastic in South Bend last year. That wasn't the problem. The offense fell apart. So I look at that Notre Dame game at the end of the season. If USC is 9-2, they win that one, they're going to be in. At 8-3, if they win it, they're going to be in. Maybe that's a tougher sell for me. But I do think that's a very winnable game on this schedule. And so if you beat LSU, you have and split against Penn State and Michigan, that Notre Dame game probably decides whether you go to the playoff. That's my guess. But
this goes back to why I think Miller Moss is part of the Heisman discussion. He's got too many Heisman moment possibilities. You start off with LSU, go to Michigan, you got Notre Dame. Penn State.
It certainly helps when you're playing 4 gigantic games, right? I mean, that helps. And it helps if you play well in those.
Sure.
That means they've got to protect it. We'll see. I think they will. But I mean, look, with this USC team, I actually feel pretty good about the defense. I feel good about the offense because I like the skill positions and I trust Lincoln Riley. But there is enough to be concerned about in that offensive line that if things go south, that's where it's going to go south. You could have you have an injury at left tackle, and all of a sudden the season could fall apart. I mean, it's really that simple. So hopefully not. I shouldn't have said that. Just saying that was a mistake, but it is true. Okay. Anything you want to share before we sign off, guys? Okay. Hey,
No,
we'll
that's
see
it.
you
Come
in
out,
Vegas
like you said, come out to Las
Saturday.
Vegas. Come meet up with us. Yep.
I mean, look, it's hard to imagine a more exciting group than the three of us to hang out with for an hour and a half. Come meet us in Vegas, 10 a.m. at the Palms.
Yep.
We're meeting in a nice room right there by the pool. We're gonna have a great location, but it's air conditioned. It's gonna be
Green Street
fantastic.
Kitchen.
So, say it again.
Green Street
Say it
Kitchen
again.
at the Palms.
Okay. All right. There it is. Show up. We'll see you Saturday. And that's it. Until then, fight on, everybody.